Alright, I caved. Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we've got, finally, some Game of Thrones whisky. Now, I covered my first Game of Thrones whisky about 18 months ago when I first covered the White Walker, the Johnny Walker White Walker. Gave it a bit of a panning. I have to say it's still one of the worst whiskies that I've tried to date. I still have that same bottle of it. I can't bring myself to drink it, and it's really expensive for what it is. Not recommended by this channel in any way, shape or form. Now, to give you a bit of history on these Game of Thrones bottlings, I'm sure if you're watching this you already know all this, but what happened was Diageo had a bit of a masterstroke on their hands, and they released a very, very small amount, although it seemed like a large amount. In grand scheme of things, it was a small amount. And they released 7 other whiskies, maybe 8 if you include a couple of the others, to signify different houses from the Game of Thrones series. Now, this went utterly insane all around the world, but people were scrabbling to get hold of them, and in the end, they ended up on auction websites and whatnot for about £1,500 for the set, when at recommended retail, you were spending around about £350, £400, something like that for the complete set. That's all fine, we've got a limited release, as it says here, limited edition. People want to see these, they look lovely, a nice, getting all of the set together. In fact, I have another one down here, but I think you can just about see it, the top of it there. I'll be reviewing that in the next couple of weeks. But I didn't really get involved in any of that because I didn't see any of them. Some of them seemed expensive. Others of them were literally just rebranded bottles from exactly the same whiskey that you could get from other ones, like Cardew Gold is a great example. That is literally exactly the same bottle, no change, just rebranded, and then they've added another £5 or a tenner onto it, which is utter farce in my opinion. So I stayed out of it, even though the White Walker video did really well on the channel, really well. It's probably about a fifth of my total volume of views, just that one video. So I could have made some videos just to create videos for the sake of it, but I don't really like doing that. I'm a whiskey drinker for the whiskey drinker, so I only really buy bottles that I'm definitely going to be interested in, maybe if I can. So afterwards, I did try them all, and I picked and chose the ones I liked. Still, I have to say, vastly expensive this range is, and if you bought them, I'm sorry to say that to you, because I know a lot of people love them. If you're holding on to them hoping that they're going to be worth something someday, I severely doubt that they will, because there are going to be a lot of unopened bottles of these in the world ready to go at auction from anywhere between now and the end of time. So personally, I recommend that you open them and just drink them, even if you spent an exuberant amount of money trying to get hold of these damn things. Because as you might know, then Diageo released a second wave after the hype got loads and loads and loads. Secondary market went nuts. They released a second wave of these things for RRP again, and rubbed salt in the wounds to everybody who had spent a lot of money on secondary market. One of those things. Now, those stock, I'm going into a bit of a story here, so bear with me. That secondary stock that came out then sat on the shelves for a long time, because anybody who wanted to rush around to get them already had them, and people like me were just a bit like, whatever, don't really care. Then, in my local area, Amazon lets you deliver alcohol to your door, which is awesome. I'm sorry, in some states in America, maybe in the entire America, I know you can't get that, so I apologise for that, but it reduced in price overnight. This is typically around £45, and I'll get into what actually this bottle is soon, I promise. This is usually about £45, and then it dropped down to 33, something like that. Really cheap, I have to say, really cheap. It's there for about £34 now on Amazon, so if you are interested at the end of this review, you can go and get it for a good price right now. That's the end of my kind of high horse about these things. Basically, be really careful about anything that's kind of like a famous person tie-in or a TV show tie-in or whatnot. Just be careful about it. I'm not saying that they're all bad, because as we'll get into with this one here, they're not all bad. But you just have to be a bit careful about where your money's actually going into these things. If it's going to be something in here, or if it's all this, or this like gold leaf nonsense here. Whatever. Anyway, so today we've got a Talisker. Now, if you've watched the show, I don't cover many Taliskers, but only because there isn't a whole heap of them in a core range around. But everyone's that I've tried, I've really liked. Especially, I have to say, the Talisker 18 year still one of the best value 18-year-old whiskies you can get on the market. So that meant when I saw this on a good price, it seemed like one of the ones I would pick up. I picked this up and the Klein Leash, which we'll go into another day. Two distilleries that I really like. Not too bothered about the other ones in the range. There is a Lagavulin that I probably would enjoy, but it was just a bit too much money at the time. Whatever. So this is the Talisker Special Reserve, and this is the House Greyjoy. To be honest with you, I'm not going to go into the Game of Thrones stuff because there's not really much point. If you're into Game of Thrones, you'll know what House Greyjoy is. If you're not into Game of Thrones, you won't care. So there's no point me going into the different houses in the islands and whatnot, because really it means nothing. It's just a happenstance. This is an island, whatever. So I ended up going into it after all, but never mind. Moving on. It's a bottle strength of 45.8, which is typical for Talisker. So it's pretty good that they've done that. They could have done 40%, I suppose, if they wanted to, but it would have ruined it a little bit, I think. Additional, of course, definitely 100% added colour in there, because they want the bottle to look the same as the rest of the bottle in this little range. And if you see a picture of them all together, you'll note that they all have the same colour to it. So we're not going to talk about colour anymore. That's just a thing. So really, that's it. There's nothing too special about this, I have to say. It's a typical Talisker. Even at £35, it's very typical of some of the other prices. You can get the Talisker 10-year-old for a very similar price in my area. There's some that are a bit more expensive, for sure. At £45, this is 100% not recommended. But for the price it is now, let's get into it and see what we've got on the nose, shall we? Is it really worth the money? Hopefully so. You can see I've tried a little bit of this. I quite like it. Now, on the nose, it's very Talisker, let's say. If you know your Taliskers well, you know immediately what I'm talking about. If you don't know your Taliskers well, then you're talking about, there is an element of smoke to it, like Talisker do a heavy char on their barrel, so this is an ex-bourbon barrel, heavily charred, so you are getting a little bit of smoke, but it's mostly a kind of seaweedy, briny kind of vibe about it. And then some smoked wood after. It's not like medicinal, or it's not kind of like ashy or anything like that. It's just a really nice bonfire on the beach. Oh, tasting note. And there's some caramel elements to it as well. It's quite sweet. So it's a good nose. It's a nice nose. I like it. Let's try on the palate. Oh, I've just noticed that I'm doubling up on Aquavitae stuff today, completely by accident. Every time I film these things, I just grab a t-shirt out of my t-shirt drawer. I've got like several whiskey ones now, and I just grab a glass from up here, whatever, I don't really care. Although I do tend to be careful if I'm not covering a bourbon, for instance, I don't reach for my British Bourbon Society glass, or if I am covering a bourbon, I grab one of theirs, that sort of thing. So yeah, just a bit of happenstance today. Now on the palate, lots of salted caramel on the front end. On the back end, more of this smoke come out. It's definitely this kind of burnt wood vibe going on. Peppery spiciness there. And the smoke, I should say, is quite light. It's not like overbearing. It's not kind of peat. It's not boggy. It's not ashy. It's just a really tidy, warming dram, I would say. In terms of finish, it's medium length. It's not like overly special. Nice and spicy, nice and light on the kind of smokiness, but it's just really tasty. I have to say, it's really tasty. I do give Diageo a bit of a hard time sometimes because they have been known to put out stuff that I'm not really that interested in. Sometimes on the channel, I might get some comments about, a good example is the Johnny Walker Red Label. Not a very nice whiskey in my opinion, but it's a favourite whiskey across the world. There's a lot of people that love it, so I will never tell you that it's a terrible whiskey. I would just say, I don't really like it that much, but you might. That's fine. This, on the other hand, is actually a really tasty dram. And it's kind of a shame that it's kind of mixed in with this whole vibe with the kind of Game of Thrones stuff. I'm glad I picked it up at £33. Definitely would not have bought it at £45. I recommend that if you're interested in Talisker at all, or if you were eyeing this up at any stage and you weren't sure about it, then get it while you can at the good price. If it starts disappearing and it starts going up in price again, just forget about it and move on. Get yourself a Talisker 10 instead. It's just the same. There's not much difference between the two. The only real reason to get this is something ever slightly different. I mean, I haven't done a side-by-side, to be fair, so I can't say if they're exactly the same or not. But just something a little bit different, a little bit nifty. I quite like Game of Thrones. It's one of my favourite sets of books, that sort of thing. So for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer, but, you know, it's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. Try and ignore the secondary market on stuff like this if you can.